Hey guys, welcome to La Bóveda. My name is El Joe, and today I want to do something very, very special because lately there's been a lot of noise and a lot of speculation and debate about really what makes a game survival horror. Opinions are flying around like bats in a haunted mansion, no pun intended. And while I respect it, here's my take. I think that yes, opinions do matter. But we have something even stronger to guide us, guys. We have gaming history. So instead of getting lost in endless debates, let's go back. Let's strip it all down and look where it all started. Not to put anyone on the spot, not to criticize or belittle nobody's view or opinion. Because the beauty of gaming is that everyone is entitled to their own perspective. That's how we build healthy communities through respect, dialogue, and love for the craft. So where did survival horror begin? Resident Evil, March 22, 1996. One of the best days in gaming history. That right there was not just a game. It was a moment. A genre was born. I'm not making this up. That's history. Now, sure, there were like precursors. Two big ones come to my mind when I kind of think about it. One, Sweet Home on the Famicom, 1989. And the other one, on the other hand, Alone in the Dark, 1992. Alone in the Dark, especially, is often called the first survival horror game. And I get it. I can understand why. It had tank controls, inventory management, puzzles, and eerie environments. It laid the foundation. But it wasn't until Capcom gave us Resident Evil that the genre came to be. It got, somebody gave it a name. It had now a clear identity. Everything before that, crucial? Yes. But they were like the blueprint, the spark before the fire. You know what I mean? It's like when you kind of think about Resident Evil 3 and think about Nemesis, or you think about Resident Evil 2 and you think about Mr. X. For me, that happened to had the opportunity to live to this time and get to play Friday the 13th on the NES, and I can help to think about the Jason Voorhees on that game. And it was inspired by the movie with the same name that we all know. Who doesn't know Jason Voorhees? Now, what about psychological horror? Silent Hill, right? That's where Silent Hill comes in. 1999. It enters the conversation. Technically speaking, a survival horror game. Yes. It twisted the formula a little bit. Instead of focusing on creature or biohazard or biocrisis, it dove into guilt, trauma, the human psyche. That's what I consider the father of psychological horror. And let's be real, the steel pipe came in handy, didn't it? Saving those bullets, you remember that? You see, survival horror has always had action. Yes, I said it. Even from the beginning. Knives, pistols, shotguns, even rocket launchers. But what defined the action was limitation. Limited ammo, limited resources. You had to think, you had to survive. The maps were super claustrophobic environments. And then, of course, a couple of jump scares thrown in the mix. It made it great times. Every time I'm doing these videos and I kind of like start thinking about the first times I played this, I think I know why I fell in love with it. During the PS1 era, we had titles like Martian Gothic Unification, Echo Knight, and even Evil Dead Hail to the King. They carried those ideas forward. That PlayStation 1 era, you can't deny greatness when you see it. Then we have the golden age of survival horror, which here in La Bóveda, we say that happened during the PS2 era. PlayStation 2 was definitely the golden age. During this time, the genre started to do something that I like to call ramifications of survival horror. Bear with me for a second. We can always go back and take Clock Tower, for example. Pure point-and-click terror. It was beautiful, beautifully crafted. No weapon, just hide and survive. Then Clock Tower 3 came into the mix, and games like Hunting Ground brought the damsel in distress angle. You're being stalked, vulnerable, powerless, but still surviving, though. Rule of Rose, beautiful, disturbing, and yeah, I technically had a gun, but that's a conversation for another day. The PS2 era gave us so much. It gave us masterpieces like Fatal Frame series, Kuon, Siren, and Silent Hill 2, 3, and even 4, even though that you guys don't like it, I love it. Those games that lean into existential horror, loss, and psychological complexity. Meanwhile, titles like The Thing, Cold Fear, Extermination, and The Suffering lean harder into action while still dipping their toes into the survival pool. You notice I didn't mention Resident Evil 4, right? Wait for it. Let's talk about the GameCube and the Dreamcast. They both gave us unforgettable entries like Eternal Darkness, the Resident Evil remake, Code Veronica, Carrier, and yes, oddballs like Blue Stinger and The Ring Terror's Realm. Some were hits, some were misses, but they all contributed to the genre's evolution. Also, we can never forget about Alan Wake and the importance it bears during Xbox. Like this is a masterpiece right there. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably telling, but
Joe, that's not a survival horror game.
I know. It's just, this is one of those games that makes you feel like it comes from that route, even though it's so heavy and it leans so much into action cinematic horror that it just makes me feel like I'm playing something that derivates from survival horror, even though it's not. Even though it says it here clearly. A psychological action thriller. Again, opinions. Facts. Without games like Silent Hill and Resident Evil, we wouldn't have games like this. This is a great game, but this is so undervalued, guys. Such a great game. Who would have thought that these guys are gonna end up doing the Silent Hill 2 remake? Perfect. I can understand the point of view where The Evil Within is not seen as a survival horror game, but again, everybody's entitled to their opinions. I think it is. 5 and 6, it's debatable, but I think they all come from the root. You don't understand what I'm saying? The root moves forward, evolves, ramifications. But the question is, the real question behind me making this video and me wanting to get my opinion out there, it's when did action become too much? Most will point it to Resident Evil 4, and I agree. Amazing game, revolutionary even, but it changed completely the formula. And after that, the PS3 era turned it up to 11, like to the roof. It's like, yeah, just forget about it. It's just, now we're going. Resident Evil 5? It's a great co-op game, incredible story, but the survivor element, fading. Great story, one of my favorite entries of the series. Nothing. For me, back in the day, it was a survival horror game. No. Well, just wait for it. I promise you it's gonna be worth it. Resident Evil 6, on the other hand, even more action-packed. Like, it divided the fan base. That's what these games did. They all contributed to the genre's evolution, but it created niches. It divided the fan base. It broadened the spectrum. That's it, the spectrum. The same thing happened to Silent Hill. With Homecoming and Downpour, some fans loved them, others didn't, and that's okay. That's why we have, multiple titles, game entries, because there's like, when you cut a pie, some people like the frosting topping, and others just eat this weird people that eat pizza without the crust. Yeah. We have those in games too, I guess. Back to the topic. Games like Homecoming and Downpour, they did the same thing to the Silent Hill franchise that Resident Evil 4 and 5 did. Some of us loved it, some of us hated it. Well, hate is a strong word, but some of us didn't like it, even though, in the dark corners of the internet, there's really hate. But they lean harder into action. There were still great games in their thing, but again, further along the survival auction spectrum. It may sound like everything on the PS3 was bad, but it wasn't. I think they're all great games, like, in a way, I guess. I mean, we have this, like, right? I love them anyway. But we also got great games on the PS3. Take a look, baby. We did have good games on the PS3. I mean, guys, not everything was this perfect, you feel me? They were not perfect, but I consider them good. I don't know. It's like I said, it's my opinion. But back to facts. If it was not for those games, one of the greatest action-adventure games ever created, that it's based out of survival horror or inspired by, would have never come to fruition. Masterpiece. Some people don't understand that the same way that games evolve, they evolve with what's happening in the surroundings, what's influencing the developers and the story writers and the people that are behind the game. During the PS2 era, we have great titles, action-packed like SOCOM, and then PS3 introduced Call of Duty Modern Warfare. So, guys, the action influence was going to be there. And then another take that it's not that famous, and people take it as an excuse, but it is harder and harder to start with a normal guy. You can make survival horror with him, but then he gets hardened veteran. He gets into hardened veteran. He gains experience. That's Leo. That's Chris. That's Jill. So it's more leaning to action now. Or at least that's what they believed when they were making these games. Now I think we can agree that genres grow. And it's not about who's right or wrong, it's about what stay closest to the core. So let's talk about Dead Space. The first one, 100% survival horror. Limited ammo, isolation, dismemberment mechanics were great. I remember when it came out, it was just beautiful. A sci-fi nightmare done right. But then we have Dead Space 2 and 3. They lean harder into action, still great games, but again, further along that survival action spectrum. During this time, we also saw the birth of The Evil Within, which is, it includes Shinji Mikami in the mix, which is Papa. But again, we saw an action lean towards that spectrum, but at the same time, the psychological lore, the heaviness of this human psyche in this game was so good that in my opinion, it is still a survival horror game. When I think about evolution, sometimes you have to think when it got to be too much and we have to pull it back. And that's when Resident Evil 7 comes into the conversation. A full revival. They took what Hideo Kojima did on Silent Hill PT and brought it to life. First-person horror, claustrophobic, unrelenting, followed by Resident Evil 8, which mixed it up but still retained the soul. Let's give some flowers to the indies because, you know, I feel like nowadays it is more important to talk smack about something, especially when you haven't even played it. And it feels like that's not okay. During 2017, I believe 2018, I leaned heavily into survival horror indie games. And that's when I discovered that the real good stories were on the indie game spectrum. Let's give some flowers to Tormented Souls, Daymare, Signalis. Beautiful. Crowd Country, Alisa, which I think it's one of the greatest games of survival horror. The Mute House. Heartworm just came out and it's just, I can't stop playing it. Conscript, Hollow Body, The Connection, The Nightmare Within, Phobias Indifna Hotel, Observo, Dreadout, Remothered, Eldervale, Fear of the Dark Unknown. That one remind me of Resident Evil 1 Remake Heart. It's hard. It's just hard. Them and Us. Oof. A game that not a lot of people understand. Darkwood. Post-Trauma was not what I was expecting, but it's still a good game. And Dead of Darkness, just to mention a few. There's a lot of them that are gonna be out soon, like Fleshmade Fear, Pulsebreaker. Lumina Veil is out and they're continue working on it. And it's free. Phase Zero, bro. Oh, Phase Zero is gonna be so great. Liminal Point, it's upcoming. Pinnacle Point, Heavy Metal Death Gan. That one got me so pumped. Echoes of the Living. I've been waiting for that game for so long. I'm very pumped for the Lacerator. Ecograph, oof, that looks like a very interesting game to play. And there's a lot of them that I actually like, and a lot of them that I'm looking forward for them to come out, because there's people like you and me that are Resident Evil core fans, and not even Resident Evil, survival horror core fans that are out waiting for these games, even though that they introduce their own thing. And that's great. That's what makes evolution. That's what makes games different. Imagine if all the games after Resident Evil were Resident Evil clones, exactly the same, with exactly the same type of characters, but just change the names, it would be boring as. Some of these games are meant to make us feel things, and I think that's the core of this, and that's why it gets misunderstood sometimes. And sometimes we can think a game is like, oh, this is leaning more towards the spectrum of what a real survival horror game is, but it just feels like it comes from the roots. Some of the games that I mentioned are just inspired by, and you can tell when you play them, but still, where's that message? Games like Silent Hill scream psychological and mental health. Games like Resident Evil play a lot with the what if a biocrisis happened. So there's a lot behind these games and the messages. Hunting Ground, Rule of Rose, all of that topics that I can't mention the words because if not the video gets like, but you know what I'm talking about. All this stuff happens on a daily basis, and back in the day, it was kind of like a, hey, this happens. Maybe what Hollywood was not talking and screaming about it, the gaming industry was actually telling people this is happening. And that's a great part of it. So let's circle back. Let's go back to the start. If survival horror defined by action, yes, it is. It had action back in the day. It was just limited. Can we say that psychological trauma inspired it? Maybe. By hiding and running? It all boils down to that creation of terror and how it builds up and explodes into horror, and how that plays with your primal instincts of fear. It's great. It's great. It's like your body's getting all of these images and you're getting overstimulated. The truth is, it's all of it and more. It's a genre with branches, with evolution, with heart. If you ask me when action is too much and when I think the game is survival horror, because that's the question, that's the video, right? I feel when you start having the feeling that you are in control, that's when the survival horror goes away, because the limitations and the puzzles and the limited ammo, the inventory management, the tank controls, the eerie sounds, the eerie environments, the jump scares, everything that came in perfect and defined the hallmarks of survival horror, when you start having control, it goes away. Poof. So if you think about it, when I said there was always action, you remember when you started like unlocking unlimited ammo, infinite ammo with the rocket launcher, the game didn't feel right? It was different. When you're not in control, when you feel that dread, when you still feel like you can't go without saving, that's when survival horror is still there. When you have control, we have lost you, my brother. Games change, genres evolve, but the OGs will always be there for us to enjoy once again, quietly reminding us where we came from. At the end of the day, no one holds the absolute truth, but we can share what we love, celebrate the difference, and agree to disagree with respect. Because if we're all here, It means we care. It means you care. That's why you're watching this video, right? It means we're still haunted by those hallways, those locked doors, that single bullet left in the clip, being lost in the map, not knowing what else to do. And that, my friends, is survival. My name is El Joe, and welcome to La Bóveda. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more. Until the next time, guys, El Joe out.